Hi everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Indie Beauty TV. This is episode 34 so far this year, and I'm glad to say it's not a solo episode. I am joined today, as you can see, by Nancy from Align Design. And we're going to be talking in a second all about what your brand colours really say about your business. But just in case anybody has not come across Indie Beauty TV before, my name is Rachel Whittaker and I'm the founder of Indie Beauty Delivered and also the founder of the Indie Beauty Rockstars mentor program. You can find me obviously here on Facebook if you'll pick this up, but I'm also over on Instagram and I have a YouTube channel which has all the episodes, backdated episodes of Indie Beauty TV available for you to watch on. If you don't have time to watch your Indie Beauty TV, it is also available as a podcast. So if you go to Anchor FM, you can then choose which platform, sort of podcast platform you want to use it on. So you can get it on there. What else can you do? You can also come and join my very, very, very special email group, and you can do that through my website. So if you enjoy what we're talking about today, and you enjoy what's happening on my social platforms, then being part of my very special email group is well worth your while. Enough about me. Let's move on and get into the topic today. So as I mentioned, I'm being joined by Nancy, who's the founder of Aligned Design, which is a design studio, which works with beauty brands, because Nancy has an absolute passion, like all of us do who work in the industry, for beauty. So Nancy, tell us a little bit more about you and your company and where you're based and who you're working with.
Yeah, so, hi, I'm Nancy. So Aligned Design Co. is kind of me and a dream team of creative freelancers, and mostly we work with beauty and wellness businesses, a lot of independent beauty brands, because we just love that passion and the creativity that they bring. And I really like working with beauty founders, partly because I'm an absolute beauty addict myself, like you just said. And also it's just something I've always had an affinity with. So I've been designing for over 15 years, but this is kind of my niche. And we do a lot of branding work with beauty brands. So we will work with them on kind of discovering what the concept is and what their unique story is, and then translating it into the visual brand. So the logo, the colours, the fonts, the website, the packaging, and the whole kind of look and feel. So it's a really, really fun job. I feel pretty lucky that that's my job, to be honest.
I read on your website that you're a fontaholic.
Yes, I am a fontaholic. Yeah. I don't know, if you made me choose between what's my favourite between fonts and colours, I think that would be really difficult to do. But yeah, I can spend hours researching fonts. I've got books about them. I've kind of been on courses about them. Yeah, there's so much to discover.
And I guess that's one of the things about working with people like yourself who are so into design, is that things that many of us perhaps we know that they are of importance, but perhaps our understanding isn't as deep as it should be. You guys open our eyes to these sorts of things.
Yeah, I think that we've kind of got like a gene that makes us tune into the visual look of something, and just wherever I go, I'm kind of like magpieing little ideas and hanging out in the department stores and looking at how they've packaged something, or what typeface they've used, or like everything.
Have you been approached by anybody in a department store yet because they think you're suspicious?
Oh, not yet, but I'm sure that'll happen one day. I've certainly been sold to. Yeah, it's definitely turned into me buying things for sure.
Yeah, I went to the new Boots store in Covent Garden on the first day it opened.
Oh yeah, I did too.
So, yeah, I was so excited in there. I got my camera out and I was taking pictures, and they did actually come up and ask me who I was.
Did they?
Yeah.
They thought you were like an amazing influencer. Or...
Well, no, I'm not entirely sure what they thought I was. I think maybe they were more suspicious about me pinching ideas. I don't know. It wasn't a particularly friendly. Who are you and what are you doing? But luckily, I was able to say that I worked with some of the brands that were in there, which was the truth. So that was okay. But yeah, I've become a little bit more worried about hanging out in department stores and places now.
Yeah, I'll have to be a bit more circumspect next time.
Have your story ready.
Yeah, that's right.
Brilliant. And so you work. So tell us a little bit more about the areas that you help brands design, because there's quite a few different areas where your expertise are helpful.
Yeah, so kind of every project starts with quite a lot of discovery work, because a lot of what goes into the design comes from the story of the brand and why they're doing it in the first place and what the passion is behind it. It could be also things like the ingredients that are used. If the company is very passionate about natural ingredients, or a particular kind of skin condition, or any sort of niche that they fall into, is really, really important for us to discover before doing any design, because obviously with such a crowded marketplace, it's important that you differentiate yourself from other companies. So that's kind of it's a really big part of the project before any sketches or anything is done. So yeah, we do a lot of discovery first, and then spinning off from that, the brand identity. So that would be kind of beginning with the mood board to encompass that creative direction, and then going on to logos, colour palettes, patterns, photography, all of the kind of ingredients that build the brand identity visually, and then also kind of some of the messaging stuff as well. Mm. And then once the brand identity is established, then we will go on to kind of create the website, the packaging, social media images, print stuff, the whole kind of thing. Really, we do the whole thing, and that's sort of where some of my freelance colleagues come in as well, and do some photography work or web development or kind of specialised stuff. So it works really well, because obviously as freelancers we're able to work with people perhaps who have a lower budget than others, who, if we had a big agency office and all those overheads, then we'd obviously have to charge more. But I think, and it's really nice to have freelancers on your team as well, because they bring lots of different perspectives and experience, and I think we're kind of doing it because we love it as well. It's not just a payday, is it? So I feel like I've rambled there, but that's pretty much what we cover. And it's a very collaborative sort of way to work as well. I always make sure that we work with the client and get them involved in every stage, because I want it to be a team effort, not just here's your design. I want to make sure that it's really something that represents them and tells their story authentically. Yeah.
So you kind of you like work in that collaboration with the brand and the brand team, and you kind of translate what's in their kind of heart and their heads into something that's quite visual, and absolutely depicts everything that they've sort of been dreaming about, I guess, when they think about launching their brand.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you hit a point where it becomes quite intuitive, and there's a little bit of magic involved, I think, in that step between what, like you say, what's in their heart and head, and then actually translating it into something real. And that's the bit where you've got all the knowledge and you've got all the background stuff that's really important, but then you have to kind of let the creative instinct take over and see where that runs. Which is the really fun part.
Oh no, I think it's really, really interesting. And what you're saying about working with freelancers, I mean, that's I have a couple of freelancers that I work with, but one of the reasons I work, and I'm sure you're going to agree with this, with in the indie community, is because it's a wonderful place to work. You meet so many wonderful people who are all creative and are doing things because they're totally passionate about it. It just beats corporate life, hands down, where there's that whole kind of like turning up and doing my job. Everybody wants to be here when you work in our industry. It's cool.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? It's a really nice community, isn't it?
It is. Well, because we met at Beauty Exchange this year, didn't we, when you were on the panel? And that's just, that's the sort of event that I think epitomises really our industry, and that it's just full of people who are exceedingly ambitious and have great ideas and are just looking for those experts to help them to just sort of make those dreams come true. So good event.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, because I was already aware of you. I think before that, I was kind of like a little stalker fan on social. I was like, oh yeah, Rachel. She looks like she knows. She's really good at what she does. So yeah,
bless you. We're going to get into some details because we thought it would be really cool to look at the power of colour, I guess, and how colour kind of can really make a difference to your brand and bring your brand to life. So, let's start off by saying why is colour one of the most important things that we should be thinking about as we're building our brands? And I'm listening intently at this because this is not my forte either, and I could probably do better.
I think colour is one of the reasons why it's so key is because colour communicates more instantly than other aspects of the brand. So it's almost like it has an emotional way of communicating with you that goes deeper than the words that you're using. Like you're not even aware sometimes that you're being affected by colours. Say if you're sitting in a room that's been painted a certain colour that makes you feel uplifted, as opposed to kind of, I don't know, sitting in a room with hospital green or something that makes you feel really kind of drab and de-energized. So there's lots of kind of subliminal messages that you get from colour. And with branding, obviously, that's going to make a huge difference. Say if it's a product on a shelf, the way that you use colour is going to make a big difference to whether it gets noticed, whether it gets picked up. So it's not just about the shades that you're using, it's also how you're using them. And I think, it's one of the key elements. Obviously, every part of your brand has an important role to play, but I think used well, colour can be incredibly powerful. And used badly, it can kind of make a really negative impact as well. I was thinking, as I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to say today, I was looking at some old 90s packaging designs for products and how kind of brash they were and bright and like, huge fonts across them and things, which I guess that was the style at the time. But now these days, it just wouldn't cut it, would it?
No, and it's really interesting because it's also because things change, don't they? And also, I think with colours, perhaps we get a little stereotype. So I think I was in Cosmetics Global earlier this year, and Sam Farmer was talking about visual branding on deodorants.
Right.
And he was talking about the fact that if you go and actually have a look at the deodorant aisle and you look at the shelves, you'll see, there's no real difference between deodorant for a girl who's 14 and deodorant for a boy who's 14. Maybe the fragrance is different, but what he was saying is the use of colour on there as well as language was really stereotypical. There was that kind of pinkness versus that blackness, that kind of real sort of obvious kind of sort of almost stereotyping of colours in that respect.
Yeah,
which I thought was interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it? And I think the trend is moving away from that more now, starting to, certainly in independent brands where people don't necessarily want to be labelled, and a lot of products have unisex formulations anyway. So I guess it's much more modern way to think of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's and also around the sort of things of, like, I think sometimes something else I was listening to a while ago was talking about male grooming and how that needs shaking up colour wise, and again there's this sort of, stereotypical approach of black packaging and grey packaging with really bold, big writing that's very manly. And there was almost this outcry from people saying, from men saying, we don't want this anymore. This actually doesn't suit, this isn't the kind of way we are now. Perhaps in the 90s it's where we were, but we're not there now. We're actually much softer and we're much more in touch with our feminine side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, like, people are much more open. I think men are getting much more open to looking after their skin, aren't they? And not feeling like it's, comical to do that. You just made me think now, because in the bathroom here that I share with my husband, my side of the room has all sorts of colours and packaging, and his is just black and grey.
Yeah,
I mean, he's not a big skincare guy anyway.
Yeah,
but what he does have, is mostly navy blue, black and grey. I'd love to see a bit more.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess because I was thinking around this when I was thinking about things that I was going to talk to you about and things, and I'm wondering how much when we come to you as brand founders, I wonder how much we bring, one that's kind of stereotyped into us, and also secondly, how much do we bring of what we would like? Because I guess there's this big thing about, is it a colour we like, or is it a colour that appeals to our ideal customer? And if we're not the same? And there's those sorts of questions that come into it as well.
Yeah, that's a big one. People ask me that a lot, about where that crosses over, what you like and what your customer's going to like. And they're not necessarily the same thing, but they're really unlikely to be poles apart as well. I mean, if a client really hates orange, I'm not going to put orange in the brand, but I will challenge you and I will suggest things that you might not have thought of, or kind of, I think obviously as designers, our job is to come up with things that you haven't necessarily thought of and then help you see things in different ways. I think what my client likes and what their taste is definitely comes into it, but then there has to be development from that into the market itself, and what people are going to be attracted to in that market, and what represents the brand, and kind of puts across those emotional messages. All those sorts of things come out in the discovery process. And it does flow, if you've done that work, it does flow quite easily. So I think one of the mistakes that people sometimes make is go, I need to choose my brand colours, and kind of go on Pinterest or go crazy picking things, but without having taken that step back and thought about the keywords and the values and all the messages that they want that to. It's much easier once you've done that bit of work. And
we all know we should be doing our ideal customer a lot, working on our ideal customer, and we all know that's actually one of the steps that we quite often skip through a little bit, but it's worth it because everything comes from there, doesn't it? And that's the value of using the expertise of yourself, really, in that you keep people focused on the marketable side, creating a brand that is going to appeal to the customer. And making it a little less personal. And I think sometimes as founders, we need that. We need to really be reminded that we're not selling to ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like just the value of sitting down with something written. And so I was going to mention later, so we've got a free mini workbook for people to download. And it's really nice. It's just a few pages of questions to help you start to dig into that stuff. And I think it's really valuable to kind of print that out and sit down and think about it, because you're kind of taking a step away from it, and somebody's giving you a little bit of homework to make you think about your business in a slightly different way. And it's quite fun to do as well. It doesn't have to be kind of a drudge. It's actually quite a fun exercise. And yeah, just from there, you can start to think about the colours and the styles that will fit with what you want. And it's it might not necessarily be the same as what your designer would come up with, obviously, but it's nice to have a starting point. And it's nice if you are going to a designer to be able to say, this is where I've got to so far.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds brilliant. Well, there'll be links to that on the podcast. There'll be links to that on the Facebook page. There'll be links to that on YouTube. And I'll remind everybody about that again when we get to the end as well. But thank you. That's really cool. We'll talk about that again towards the end. So let's get into some more detail then. So when we start thinking about these colours then, what are the sorts of messages and moods that certain colours are sort of bringing to mind, if you like?
So I wanted to show a little bit of some examples for this, because when we're talking about colour, it's nice to be able to have a look and
cool. This is the first for Indie Beauty TV. We have never shared a screen before on Indie Beauty TV. It'll be cool. I feel like I need to do a drum roll for it. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, we're there.
Yay! Yeah, so this isn't one of the brands that I've designed. This is her before, but I think it's really nice. And it's one that people quite often reference when I ask them what brands they like and what works, which is quite interesting because it's such a minimal pared back brand. But what I love about it is how they use colour and how it's actually the colours of the products that shine, isn't it, rather than the branding. I mean, the branding is so clean, and they were one of the first companies to really do this very minimal black and white look. And I think lots of companies have sort of tried to emulate it, but you come back to thinking, oh, it's, it looks like herbivore. And the colours of the products, they just, for me, they're so appealing. They're really fresh, but they're quite rich as well. To me, they just look like products that I want to try.
Yeah.
But they're not, they look natural as well. Like, I think you can see that the colours have come from the natural ingredients that they've used rather than kind of being artificially made to look that way.
Yeah.
So this was just sort of a general example of colour when it's used well in a brand. I think one of the things that this sort of exemplifies as well is that using colour in a pared back way. So if you've got strong colours, don't then use loads of other strong colours. Kind of keep it simple. Certainly at the moment, the trend with branding is to keep things quite simple and quiet. And impactful. So yeah, I think this is a really good example of that. But I also wanted to show a few other brands. So this is Afrocentrics, who I worked with last year, and it's quite a simple colour palette. We've only really got 3 main colours in there, but for me, I'll be interested to see what message you get from that. But for me, what we were going for was quite a bold, fresh look. And it's quite citrusy as well. The ingredients in the hair products are quite citrus based, so they smell the scent of the products, lemony, orangey. So that's one of the things that we wanted to hint at, because I think the relationship between colour and smell is that sort of slightly synesthetic relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you see something that's green, you might think, oh, it's apple or lime or something like that. So not to use colour that's going to jar with that kind of thing. And it's nice to hint at it. So yeah, we've got a bright orange for the text, and a yellow which we've kind of softened on the packaging, and then this sort of charcoal black. So it's very simple actually with those 3 colours, but I think it works to kind of, I don't know,
it's sweet, isn't it?
what's
And
your,
it does feel citrusy.
yeah,
Even the swirl, the sort of the actual sort of the orangey swirl on it makes me think of sort of orange and citrus and peel and the vibrancy and the smell of that kind of thing.
yeah,
So it's good because it's a good contrast with the herbivore there. In that it is busier than the herbivore, but it shows how that gives the different message.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yes, like you say, it is busier, and it's got a balance to it as well. So I think if we'd,
I like minimal colour, just
yeah,
kind of three colours as well. Is really, really cool, and that obviously makes it easier when you begin to translate things over onto social and images and graphics. And
that's right, absolutely, yeah. With colour, yeah, that's really good to have that key palette so that you can keep reusing them, and you can use tints of the colours. So you might want to use like a softer orange as a background and that kind of thing, but just keeping to those. It's rare, really, that I would only do 3 colours. Normally there's at least 5, but for this it just worked. Not, and it also gives scope to expand. So if they wanted to kind of add another range, they could add another colour into that palette that would kind of fit. So that's that.
So it's like so this one particularly is using colour to pick up on some of the ingredients that are inside these products.
Yeah, and also their original branding, because this was a rebrand project. So they did have another look initially when they launched, which was a white bottle, and the text was in orange. So it's also carrying through that, so as not to completely alienate their existing customers, but to kind of modernize it and make it appealing to a new kind of sector as well.
Yeah.
And that can be quite a nice way to use colour. If you're doing a rebrand, you don't have to use the same shade, but just pulling through a thread of what was in the original branding can be quite a nice thing to do. Yeah.
Definitely.
And then it's interesting with the bottles, actually, because originally we conceived of it on a white bottle, and they did a poll on their social asking their followers whether a white bottle or a brown bottle was best, and it was like 99% people said they wanted the brown. So that was quite interesting, actually, because that wasn't something we originally thought of. And then
it is interesting, isn't it? And it's something that I think more brands should do when you've got a nice following and people your followers are sort of actively invested in your brand and engaged in your brand, is ask them questions, because they are the people that you want to sell to. And they're the best feedback that you can get. And with Instagram stories and the polls that you can do on those now, and the Facebook polls, they're really useful to do, and it gives your customers a voice, and they feel valued by doing it, by being able to contribute anyway. But just to know that you chose the bottle colour that they liked best, it is good, because you would have, you could have gone with the white, and actually they preferred the brown. So it's just that insider information, isn't it? And once you've got a following on social, use them to do this kind of thing, because it's amazing.
Yeah, and it helps people feel, like you say, part of the story, and also helps if you're worried about changing your look, that people are going to feel left behind, kind of, I don't recognise it. So it helps to bring them through and along with your new kind of journey, which is really nice.
Yeah, and that kind of behind the scenes stuff does really well for social as well. And like you say, if you are rebranding, you're almost taking them on that journey, so nothing is going to shock them. when you suddenly reveal the new brand, they're going to be really excited because they've been part of that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's great. No, I like that one. That's good.
So I'm going to show a really different one now, which is it's a product that hasn't launched yet, but I did have permission from the founder to share this. visual because I wanted to show something complete with a completely different feel color wise. So this is Flora Botanics, and you can see it's just a completely different vibe to Afro-Centric. This is skincare range, and it's very natural, but it's also quite luxurious and indulgent as well. So obviously it's not just the colour that puts that across, it's kind of the containers, and it's quite refined and things like that. But I think the colour really does, if you look at how soft they are and how muted, and how the colour can kind of give that softness and that kind of indulgent feel. It's almost like they've got a texture to them that hints at the texture of the product, whereas it's much more subtle. And I
feel like I could wrap myself up in that at the moment.
Yeah.
Like it's a great big soft bed with a massive soft duvet on it. At the moment, I just feel like I could dive into those colours. That's how that makes me feel.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that shows it. Yeah, I like that reaction. That's good. A soft bed. Yeah.
I'm actually thinking I could steal that entire colour palette for my bedroom.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, actually, because this is what I'm not going to go into the kind of whole seasonal colour palette thing because that was a whole huge area, but briefly, you can sort of divide colour palettes by season, and this one would be a summer palette, which is delicate and muted tones. That's just sort of like the feel of summer. And I always associate those with sort of Farrow and Ball paints.
Yeah.
They look quite similar in tone to that kind of the Farrow and Ball paint charts. And sometimes I use those paint charts as inspiration just to get so there you go. You can take that to Farrow and Ball and get your bedroom.
Yeah, get it. Yes, and the colours work. The colours there work really, really well, don't they? Then that's just it's just beautiful as well, and it does feel luxury, and it does make you want to go out and have that on your sort of bathroom. It's the kind of thing I'd want to have on the side of my bath rather than hidden away in my bathroom cabinet, because it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. It's not one to put away, is it? It's one to have on display.
Yeah, that's one I want people to see that I've got, for sure. Yeah. It doesn't want hiding away.
No, absolutely.
But yeah, it's really interesting. That's three very different looks, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. And what was I going to say about this one? I think obviously there are more colours in the palette, but one of the key things is that they're all tonally, they're cohesive. So if you're going back to Afrocentrics, if I plonk that yellow in amongst those, it would just be the whole lot, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So it's about, if you're thinking about colours, it's about choosing them from a palette that all tones in well together, and thinking about that as well. And if you love, say, green, choosing a green that then fits with the other colours that you've got. So that's one of those really, it's a balance. It's quite a fine balance to really get that right. But when you do, you kind of like, you get that feeling, because it just it fits and it looks.
And that's the exact feeling sort of I got when you put this final slide up. It was like, oh yeah, that all of that just goes, that's beautiful, down to the sort of the colour of the bottle for the face mask is, it is beautiful. Everything just comes together, and that is luxury. So across the three slides, then can't get my words out. We've seen Herbivore at the beginning, which is kind of using their colours to have a very fresh feel.
Yeah.
a really fresh, kind of almost lively. That one kind of makes me feel like I need to go out and dance.
Oh yeah, I get that.
It has that really fresh liveliness about it. It makes me think of spritzing my face, that kind of thing. It's got that real. And the interesting thing about there is they've actually taken their colour into their product rather than actually onto their sort of bottles or labels.
Yeah.
Which is different. And then we've got the middle one that's picking up, which Afrocentrics, which is picking up colour that's aligning with ingredients inside it, but also bringing colours through from a previous brand.
Yeah.
That to keep it. And then the final one, which is the luxury end there.
Yes. And there is one more actually, but this is another
okay.
Somerville, obviously not one of mine, but I just loved this because I had a look on their website and I loved the way they'd just gone with really, really bright colours. I just think it works really well. And it's an interesting way to use the colour as well, because the products themselves, well, I guess the top set of products has the bright colour on it as a block, but the others are a lot more pared back. So the colours, the orange and the blue is used for the text, but it's not used in a great big block. But then they've used the colour on the website to really differentiate between those three ranges.
Yeah. So to me, this one is like, this is sort of, I'm not want to say a slightly older demographic. That's not what I mean, but it's more. This is more. I'm thinking business people. Immediately, I'm thinking busy women. Sort of there's an efficiency.
Yeah,
there's definite efficiency and a complete solution kind of feeling coming off there.
Yes.
And I love the way that they are using colours to differentiate between the different lines, like you were saying, the different ranges that they offer.
Yeah.
And that's quite good. There's a brand, Yes Too, who do face masks and skincare products, and they do something similar. Their colours help to delineate which area of their brand or which sort of area of the brand and the products that you're sitting in, whether it's the tomatoes range or the unicorn range or whatever. Yeah. And they've done something really similar, and I like that. I think that's a clever way of helping your customers to navigate through your product range.
It's super clever, isn't it? Because you almost don't realise that you're being navigated by that colour system. It's like traffic lights or something.
No, I think that's really, really great. And like you say, that has a completely different feel again to the previous three. That's very good.
It's super bright, isn't it? And but not in a clashy way, because again, each colour is equally bright, so they haven't diluted it by using kind of anything soft. And I think if you're going to go for proper pops of colour like that, you need lots of white as well, because otherwise it's just going to get a bit too headache inducing. So that was the last example, really. I mean, obviously, like I say, I'm constantly getting inspired by other brands and how they do things. And I think, Kate Somerville's a really nice. It's just a really nice brand anyway. But I thought this was quite a surprising route for them, because I always associate them with being quite clinical looking.
I think that still comes through on there. I feel that does come through. I just like, but it's for a busy person, and it helps them navigate it, and they get a good range of things, and it's a complete sort of solution. It looks great. Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
And I guess what you were just saying about you are constantly inspired by and get ideas from what other brands what brands are doing, and our founders who listen to IBTV can be doing exactly the same, can't they? There's always opportunities to be looking for ideas, and not simply in the beauty space. You can quite happily go and look in what other outside of the beauty space, what brands are doing, and pick up ideas and get sort of inspired from that.
Absolutely. And I think So yesterday I was actually doing some design work for a whiskey company, and I find that really interesting because the food and drink space does have quite a lot of inspiring stuff for beauty, even though it's different. It has a different character and different kind of purpose. But there's a lot of creative design out there for particularly things like craft beer and like the niche food and drink brands. So yeah, you can definitely get inspired all over the place. Yeah.
No, that's good. So yeah, that was really clear. That gave us a really good idea of how colour can really make a difference to the way we perceive a brand and how we feel about the brand. So how do we? So we know it's important, and we know we can use it to create that kind of feeling around our brand. We've learned there that we can use it to help people navigate through our ranges if we've got multiple ranges. So how do we go about best deciding the colours that would suit us?
Yeah, so kind of going back to what I was saying before about the brand story and the discovery stuff, I always say start with that. So if people want to have a look at the workbook that we're going to talk about in a while, I think that's a really good starting point. Start thinking about the questions about your customer, about what your passions are and what your why is, and then thinking about some of there's a whole list of keywords in there that you can kind of circle if they resonate with you. And that is a really useful exercise to do, because say you choose the words edgy, modern, clinical and clean, you're going to then be directed kind of intuitively to a different palette to say your words were warm, welcoming and I don't know, soft, something like that. So getting that knowledge under your belt first, and then I always say kind of get inspired and don't overthink it. So just start getting kind of some inspiration materials. If you like Pinterest, just pin loads of colour palettes and things like that. Anything that you see around you that you think, oh, I really love the way they've used that colour, magazines and things like that, just tearing things out and really, not overthinking it at that stage, because I think it's easy to get a bit too analytical and then, you lose that inspiration. There's a couple of kind of books that I really like that I was going to recommend. This is Brand Brilliance. Can you see that?
Yes, I can. Okay, I'm writing these down because I will put links.
Yeah.
So let me write these down. Brand Brilliance, yeah.
And it's Fiona Humberstone.
Okay.
Who's a really clever lady about colour. And I mentioned about the seasonal colour palettes earlier. There's lots of really good info about that in this book. And she has another book called How to Style Your Brand as well, but this is the most recent one. So that's a really nice one to start with. If you're a real geek about it, and like me, and you want to kind of learn about colours and their history, this is a lovely book. It's called The Secret Lives of Colour by Cassia St. Clair. And it's just really lovely kind of book to dip into, and it's got loads of different colour kind of schemes in it, and the stories behind where a certain shade came from. So that's just a really nice inspo one, really. So those are some kind of book resources. There's also a website called colourlovers.com, which is it's not the nicest website in the sense it's quite noisy with ads and things, but if you can look past that, it's really nice for palettes. So you can put in a keyword, anything like sunset or something, and then there's just loads of colour palettes will pop up that people have put on there.
Oh, wow. Oh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's lovely, actually. You can vote for your favourites, and just it's nice to get inspired. And then it gives you as well the little hex code for each colour. So if you want to then use that and try and playing with it, that's a nice one as well.
Yeah, because that's kind of a good way of finding colours that perhaps you would never have thought of. Because I mean, there are millions, aren't there? Different variations. So by putting a keyword in, you can access a whole load of inspiration and ideas that you probably wouldn't have had. I like that. That sounds amazing for home decoration as well.
Yeah, totally.
Anything to do with colour.
Might go down a bit of a rabbit hole though.
Yeah.
Inspiration.
Yeah. Oh, they're brilliant. Well, I'll link to all of those. So you'll be able to find links to those below and below the podcast and the broadcast on that. So they're really, really good ideas of how you can sort of go about choosing.
Yeah, and I think as well, there's lots of good stuff you can do yourself research-wise. I think when it comes to refining the palette and really getting a set of colours that work and that really, I think a designer's eye is really useful to have for that stage. I mean, I think definitely kind of doing your own background stuff is helpful, but you might, and also a designer can then help you translate those colours, because obviously what you see on screen needs to match what you have in print, and there's all kind of stuff that you need to do technically to make sure they all match up. And Pantone books are really good as well. If you can get hold of a Pantone book, they are quite expensive to buy new, but you can get them on eBay sometimes, and they're really nice to play with and kind of tear out colours. And
yeah, I was going to say, I'll just go to the library and look at them, but don't tear out there.
No, when I say a book, I mean they have these strips of chips, and you can just tear them out and play with them that way. That's, I mean, if you really want to get serious about it. But,
and is it sort of, when we're thinking about the colours then, is it worth also just having a really clear vision of where we're going to go as brands? So, I mean, the example that we just saw was quite interesting in that there were different ranges within the one brand. And the S2 example, there are different categories within the one brand. So is it worth sort of having presenting that kind of vision at the same time, because that could add real colour you could use colour to help with those sorts of things?
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes clients do come to us with that vision in mind, that they have a certain number of ranges, or they want to decode different products that have different properties, and it's useful to know that, so that when I'm pulling together the palette, I can think about how to differentiate those. I mean, ideally you're going to have a good range anyway, but it's definitely useful to have that information in mind, just what the purpose of the colour is going to be, and obviously nothing is fixed, so you can add colours as you go along, as long as they tone in well. But I try to make sure each palette has enough colours in it, so that there's enough for different purposes over time. And I mean, but every aspect of the brand evolves over time, in any case. So yeah, it's one of those things that's a kind of a living entity, isn't it? It doesn't. It's not fixed. Yeah.
It does. It's always changing. I always tell guys in the Rockstars program to go back and look at their, for example, ideal customer at least once a year, because you can guarantee it's changed.
Yeah.
Your experience and the way that you develop and the way that your brand develops will always mean that you've got to go back. And I'm just about to relaunch Rockstars, and I've done that exact exercise. I've gone back to my ideal customer and looked at her, and it's different to this time last year. So everything does evolve quite a lot, and it's always worth remembering that, I think, because it's sometimes people can feel like, oh, I've just got it right, and now I don't, I want to move on. But it's just part of the process, and that's the exciting thing, isn't it, about having a brand, that it's constantly morphing.
Yeah, and it shows you're making progress, I guess, as well, doesn't it? Yeah.
And getting feedback from your customers all the time, which always helps. Like we were saying with the girls who put it through their social to say, what colour bottle? That kind of stuff is really amazing, because it helps you to really tune in more depth to your customer, because it's their take on things. So as much of those questions you can ask, I think, is so useful when you're doing things like this.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh man, that's absolutely excellent. I could probably talk about colour for absolutely ages, and
Yeah,
it makes me want to rush back and have a look at all the stuff that I do, and because I
yeah,
never really gave it that much thought, which is just goes to show that probably a lot of us do that. But it's such a powerful thing. So it is quite a powerful tool, and in a day and age where our brands have to be very, very visual,
mm,
whether we're on a retailer shelves or whether we are, going to be business to consumer and e-commerce only, and with social, it's all so visual,
yeah,
that it's so important to get right.
yeah. It is. Yeah, it is. I think it's one of my favourite topics as well. I think, yeah, I was working with a client yesterday who said that he was colourblind, and I thought, gosh, it was just really difficult to think. I didn't know if he was seeing what I was seeing,
Oh
and
gosh.
yeah, um, so yeah, it's definitely one of my favourite areas to work on, and I love doing the colour palette for a brand. It's just such an exciting part of it, because it's just that's what pulls it all together, isn't it?
Yeah,
Colours, yeah.
yeah, it is. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. So tell us where we can find you, Nancy. Where are you hanging out so we can come and
Yeah.
follow you?
So my brand new website is literally just launched last week, at aligned-design.co.
I will link to that, everybody.
Yeah, and then on social, I am at Aligned Design Co. So you can find mostly hanging out on Instagram, um, and yeah, at Aligned Design Co. on there. So those are my kind of major channels.
Excellent. And then tell us all again, because Nancy has really kindly pulled together a free download, a free booklet for you guys to help you start to work on your colours, whether you're starting your brand, whether you're rebranding, whether you just want to do it, see whether you got it right. Nancy pulled together a really wonderful booklet. So tell us where all about that.
Yep, so it's really easy to get a hold of. You can just go to my website, which is aligned-design.co, and if you scroll down, there's a sign up box for the email newsletter, and if you just pop your email in there and confirm, then you will get your workbook pinged into your inbox, and you can work on it on screen, or I would always print it out because I like to work on something kind of with a pen and paper. But I think it'll be really useful. It's just a nice little exercise to do, not just for colour, but just for your whole brand look and feel. And like you say, I would revisit it every year as well.
Yeah.
Just to
Yeah, I think it has to be part of that. I always say that every brand founder should do a business boot camp every year. And into that comes like a look at, I always pack John off for a weekend, so I have a weekend to myself. And that we should always go back and look at our ideal customer and our mission statements, manifestos, values, colours, just everything, and really just refresh and make sure we're cool with them. But also because it's so motivating, it reminds you on those days when you're feeling like, why am I doing this? You're like, yeah, I love my job. This is why I do it. This is the passion behind it.
yeah,
So yeah, business boot camp, put your colours in there as well, for sure.
yeah,
I'm going to go and get your free download, because I want to do a little bit more work on that. But I will link directly to that as well, guys. So you just need to scroll down and find these links below. And then obviously I'll put Nancy's social links as well, so you can just click straight through. Because we all need a little bit of a fontaholic in our lives, I think.
well, somebody's got to be one, haven't they?
Absolutely, yeah, I love that. Just love that idea that you spend. I just have visions of you just spending your evenings just looking through sort of magazines and books and sniffing out fonts, and you have this massive scrapbook of these things or something.
Yeah, that's pretty close, actually, Rachel. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, thank you very, very much for joining us. I suspect, Nancy, that we might do a few more, because there are a lot of different topics that we could be talking about on the design side. So if anybody has questions on design, pop them in the comments below, or let me know, DM me or Nancy, because we'll probably do something again together, because that's been absolutely fab. And I think we're only scratching the surface really with the colours.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to everybody who is watching this as well, or listening to this. It's been another episode of Indie Beauty TV, and they always go live every Thursday on my Facebook and over on Anchor FM. So I will see you all soon. Bye for now, everybody. Loads of indie hugs and love. Bye. Bye.